So before we begin the moving forward series for the LA Galaxy, I am going to just quickly talk about the US men's national team because, there's going to be some people that's probably going to ask me, did I watch today's match between the US versus Panama? And the answer is a little bit. I didn't watch the whole match, I watched part of the game, and that, I know there are a lot of US men's national team fans are very excited after they, of course, won 6-2 against Panama, and I'm pretty sure the media is just really hyping a lot of these youngsters that played in that US versus Panama game in the friendly. But let's not forget that was just a friendly, and that I look at these games that the US play against Panama and also against Wales just a couple of days ago, kind of like a January camp for all these US-based player that is currently playing for a European team, and that this is kind of like a trial for most of these guys. And while there's definitely some impressive guys that definitely have a future for the US men's national team, keep in mind that's probably not going to be the same squad as we head into the World Cup qualifier. And that, the other thing I want to say about friendly matches is that usually when two teams play in a friendly matches, they usually don't put their strongest team, and they put kind of like an experimental team and experiment some of the tactics and stuff like that. So as much as it's great that the US won 6-2, and this is one of the I think that this is one of the biggest score line and one of the game where we score the most goal in any friendlies that the US has been played. Gotta remember, it's just a friendly. We're gonna see what happened in the World Cup qualifying that's gonna come next season, and if things are gonna improve in this team and they're getting result in the World Cup qualifying, then I'll start believing that the fact that the US is started to come back to its form, and that there is definitely some optimism in terms of this team. But that being said, now let us actually get into the moving forward series where we talk about the LA Galaxy. And these next two moving forward series is going to be something that I think people are going to be very anticipating me to talk about, because after this I'm going to be talking about Atlanta United, and this is the first time ever that I actually get to talk about Atlanta United in a moving forward series where they did not make it to the playoffs, and I'm very interested to talk about that tomorrow and kind of talk about what's going to happen with them in the future. Now, for the LA Galaxy, before I think 2017, when you basically said that they missed the playoffs, it's kind of a shocking thing, because they usually are a team that always are in the playoffs and considered one of the best teams in MLS history. But these last couple of years, it has been very rocky, and that missing playoffs has been kind of a regular theme, with them now missing the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 seasons. And in this season, when they missed the playoffs, they finished with a record of 6-4-14 and with 22 points. They scored 27 goals this season, allowed 46 goals this season, which was the second most goal conceded this season by any MLS team. And they had a goal differential of -19, and they finished 10th in the Western Conference. Now, for the MVP, no doubt it's got to be Christian Pavone. I mean, not only the fact that he is the top goal scorer and the top assist leader of this team, but he is probably their best player on this team by a country mile. I mean, they're obviously, as I mentioned about Pavone recently, it's always been kind of talked about whether or not if he is going to stay or is he going to go back to Argentina and go back to Boca Junior. Well, one thing that I think there's a reason why people say that they hope to see Pavone stay, or at least Galaxy fans are hoping Pavone would stay, and that the Galaxy would decided to pretty much make this a permanent signing, is you just look at the numbers and look at the potential this guy has. Like, this guy could really be one of, if not the best player in this league, and that I'm kind of surprised he wasn't really in the contention of MVP. Well, I guess maybe the reason why he wasn't in contention of MVP was his team wasn't doing very well, and usually when guys are in the MVP conversation, they're usually belong teams that is kind of like in the higher echelon of MLS, and they're usually doing very well. But when you look at Pavone's number, you could definitely make a case that even in a shortened season like that is pretty impressive number, and that if we actually had a full season, those numbers could have definitely been higher, and he would have finished in the double digit list, not only in terms of goal scoring, but also could be on assist chart. And if that's the case, you usually get votes in terms of being the MVP of the league. Now, for the most disappointing player, well, this is a pretty easy one. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody know who is the most disappointing player for the Galaxy, and of course, that is Chicharito. I mean, there's really not much explaining I need to do of why he's been so disappointing, and the fact that, you know, only 2 goals that he have scored in the entire season after spending that much money to get a guy that they think he could be. I wouldn't say a replacement for Zlatan, because, you know, nobody can replace Zlatan, and there's no doubt the Galaxy is not going to replace what Zlatan did with scoring 30 goals for the team, and that they don't expect Chicharito to do, but they at least expect him to hit double digit at the bare minimum, and he hasn't even come close to even hitting the bare minimum of double digit. In fact, you know, he's been by far, you could say, one of, if not the most disappointing player this season in MLS, with the way that there was a lot of hype around that he would, of course, do well in MLS, and that this has been kind of the thing we've been talking about for the past couple of years of when exactly Chicharito is going to come to the league, and that once he comes to the league, he's going to do a big thing. Well, now he has came to the league, and yeah, it turns out it was a really huge flop. Although I will give the benefit of the doubt that I feel like if Chicharito came to this league maybe a couple of years before, then yeah, maybe he would have actually live up to what we thought Chicharito can do in this league, which is be an absolutely amazing goal scorer. But since, you know, he's been really struggling in terms of form, even before he comes to the LA Galaxy, there was always a lot of skepticism, the fact that Chicharito can rediscover his form that he had during his prime year, and it turns out that was not the case whatsoever. Now, in terms of the top goal scored, as I said, Pavone currently have 10 goals, followed by Sebastian Lletget with 6 goals. Then you have Ethan Zubak and Chicharito with 2 goals, and Julian Araujo finish with 1 goal to round up the list. Top assist leader for the Galaxy, you got Christian Pavone, also leads the team with 7 assists. Sebastian Lletget with 4 assists, Julian Araujo with 3 assists, Efrain Alvarez with 2 assists, and Ralph Felcher also ends up on to this board with 2 assists to his name. Now, what went right for the Galaxy? Well, they won 4 in a row after the MLS's back tournament, and there is no doubt that they were definitely the hottest team coming out of the MLS's back tournament, and a lot of people thought that this was a team that could actually do something in the playoffs. And then, yeah, after that 4 wins in a row, and that in some way they fell in the same trap as the Houston Dynamo, where just like the Dynamo, they were red hot in phase 1 of the regular season, and then as soon as phase 2 was announced, they basically just completely fall off the map and pretty much collapse. They won the El Tráfico series if you don't count the MLS's back tournament, and I think that's probably what Galaxy fans will say, is that, yeah, you know, we've been having a bad season, but if you don't count like the MLS's back tournament when the Galaxy got destroyed by LAFC 6-2, they still won the El Tráfico series by winning 2 out of those 3 games during the regular season. And obviously the third thing is that Pavone is definitely the real deal, but the thing is, even though he's a real deal, that means that they're going to probably have to pay him a lot of money, and that's also where we're going to have to kind of get into the discussion a little bit later in this video of whether or not if it's worth it to try to keep him. Now, what went wrong for this team? I mean, I know this is a cliche for the Galaxy, and I've been mentioning it for a very long time, but I have to mention again in this moving forward series: defense, and all defense. I mean, if there is pretty much the simplest way of looking at why the Galaxy did not make the playoffs, it's got to be their defense. I mean, it's been like, I understand that they've been trying their best to fix this defense, and they've been trying best to sign new defenders on this team, but just it doesn't seem like nothing has worked. And I'm not sure is it has to do with some of the scouting department of them not scouting really good defender, or whatever the system that they're working right now is just making their defense look bad. But for these last couple of years, they have regularly near the top of the list in terms of the most goals conceded in the league. And in a league like this today, even though these days the league does have higher goal score average per game, and that offense seems to be, or the attack seems to be the one that a lot of team does focus, you still need to have some good a competent defensive line if you want to be competitive in this team. And for the past couple of years, this is a team that definitely have a very decent attack, but the problem is the defense is a huge issue with this team, and it's the reason why it's holding them back in terms of being a very competitive team. Now, the other thing that I also want to say is that the attack also started to sputter, and that this was kind of the time near the latter part of the season when they went on this incredible miserable run where they lost 11 out of the last 13 games to finish the season. And that, when your defense was already bad and then now your attack is starting to sputter and that you started finding hard to score goals, that is pretty much a recipe for disaster and a recipe of a team that will go in a very miserable run. So there was obviously no doubt that the attack is going to be a little bit less efficient as what we saw last year, with Zlatan seeming to just single-handedly carry this team on the attacking end and scoring 30 plus goal. But I kind of feel like even without Zlatan in this team, I was expecting them to score more than just the 27 goals that they scored this season, and that their attack should at least be maybe 3/4 as good as what we saw last season, and it just doesn't seem like that was the case, especially down the stretch where their attack was really struggling. And then, of course, the last thing that went wrong, as I mentioned, they lost 11 out of their last 13 games to finish the season. And again, just like what I said in the moving forward series about RSL and the Houston Dynamo, when you go half of the season with that kind of run, you're most likely not going to make the playoffs. Now, moving forward for the Galaxy, obviously the biggest talking point for the Galaxy this offseason is the fact that will they actually keep their big star player. I've been hearing numerous rumors about the fact that Chicharito could potentially move on from the Galaxy after just one season. A lot of rumors coming out of Mexico that he would potentially go back to Chivas, but we don't know if that is going to be the case. And the other big question that the Galaxy have to make this offseason is none other than pretty much what I've been talking about a lot with this team is, are they going to keep Pavon? Are they actually going to let him just go back to Boca Junior? Or if Boca Junior is asking the Galaxy to pay like around $10 to $20 million, and I'll say $17 million because that was the last offer that Boca Junior asked the Galaxy to in order to pay them to get Pavon on a permanent deal. Are they actually going to pay that? And there's definitely argument for paying that amount of money and argument against paying that amount of money to get Pavon. Obviously, the for is the fact that if they lose Pavon heading into next season, this attack is going to be even more and more weak than before. I mean, this season a lot of their attacking plays came from Pavon, and that Pavon kind of took something similar to what Zlatan did last season, where he kind of carried this attack on his back, and he did his best to trying to make this attack decent, which at points it was relatively successful. But if they lose him, that's another good attacking piece that they lost. And what are they going to do after that? Are they going to potentially get another big star in the future? But obviously the against part of why the Galaxy should not be paying $17 million for Pavon is the fact that that's too expensive. Like, even as good as a player Pavon is, that is just so expensive to try to pay. And especially, the attack is not the only issue that they have. They have a lot of issue in terms of their attack, their midfield, and especially on their defense. So if they are going to be spending that much money on one specific player, and that there's no doubt that they're alongside with all these teams that near the bottom of the table are going through a transitional and a rebuilding stage, you are basically damaging your rebuild if you spend that much money on a single player, and that they might not have enough money in terms of addressing the real issue that they have with this team, which, as I said, it's the defense that is the biggest issue of this team that they just got to address in the future. So yeah, that is something that is kind of like my argument in terms of what should they pay Pavon or should they not pay Pavon, and that I think this offseason we're going to find out whether or not if that is going to be the case. Now, the next thing that moving forward for the Galaxy is relatively important is who, of course, will be the next head coach for them. Dominic Kinder is currently the interim head coach, and that there has been some rumor that he might potentially become a permanent head coach of this team. But there's also rumors saying that the Galaxy are already searching for their next head coach, and there's going to be some coaching candidate that they are expected to announce. So yeah, we'll see who exactly will be the next head coach. Either way, whoever is the next head coach of this team, yeah, he or she probably have a very big task in terms of trying to take charge of this team, because this team right now is just an absolute mess right now, and that, you know, it's probably next season, I hate to say it, unless if they are going to once again bring in that big star player like they have always done pretty much in every single offseason, I just don't see how this team is actually going to be much better than what we saw from last season, and that this might be a reality where they're going to unfortunately have to go through a rebuild, which rebuild is something that a lot of Galaxy fans does not want to see, and rebuild is definitely something that the Galaxy have not endured a lot in their future, because they have never had a very rocky kind of period as we have seen in these past couple of seasons. But when things have gone so bad and you need like big star player to kind of bail you out in a bad situation, that might be a situation where you might probably look at yourself and thinking that maybe we need to think about not just spending big money on these big star players so that we can get butts in our stand, which, you know, this time next season it ain't gonna help either way, because there's nobody is gonna be actually in the stands, or at least limited capacity that is for the majority of next season. So yeah, I think that is a kind of a thing that they might need to think about in the front office, but also the next head coach. Again, whoever takes charge of this team, they have a really big task to take charge of. And then of course, lastly, I kind of mentioned it a little bit while I was talking about this, is there going to be a change in the front office? And there's no doubt that if there is going to be a change in the front office, there's going to be some new philosophy and culture that the Galaxy have to set in, where they just cannot go season after season just spending big money on big star player and hope that their fans will be excited, and just kind of think about how instead of spending big money on those big star players, maybe you need to start spending money to get some of these young South American player or some proven MLS player to your team, so that you can be a competitive team. Like I've said this before, and I say it again, MLS is moving into a 3.0 era where this is no longer the MLS where when you of course are going to be competitive in the team, all you need is just a big star player. Like that might be something that would work if it was maybe in 2012 or 2014. It does not work anymore when we get into this era of MLS, and that you are seeing some of the most competitive team, and some of these teams that are in the upper echelon of MLS always tends to have multiple good, decent player on their team, and they tends to build a very strong core in the team. Well, if you're just going to bring a big name player to your team, that's not exactly building a core for your team and building a successful future that's going to basically get you to be one of the best team years after year. So I really think the Galaxy need to really rethink what they're doing, and that as much as I know they always are known for bringing some of the biggest star player into their team, they might need to rethink about that and maybe think about spending the money wisely in terms of building a young core, so that they can of course be competitive year after year and get back to the competitive level that they so known in the early 2000s and even in the late 2000s. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the moving forward series for the LA Galaxy. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and if you're a Galaxy fan, what do you think went right for your team, what went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward this season, is it actually a rebuild time for the Galaxy? Is it time to rethink the philosophy of how to actually build a successful team that could be successful in MLS? But let me know in the comments below. Until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.